The hacker destroyed the company's network, but the waitress's son saved everything in seconds. Alexandra Harrison was living the worst nightmare of her career. At 28, she had inherited her father's consulting firm just 6 months earlier, and now she watched everything crumble before her eyes. Screens flashed red throughout the office, and the most experienced technicians shook their heads in despair. That's when Martha, the waitress who arrived every morning to clean the offices, stopped in the middle of the hallway and observed the chaos. She had worked there for over 10 years, always invisible to most employees, but in that moment, seeing Alexandra's desperation, something made her approach. "Dr. Alexandra, can I say something?" said Martha, her voice trembling. Alexandra didn't even look at her, too focused on the technicians trying to solve the problem. "My son, he understands a lot about computers. Maybe he could take a look," continued Martha, knowing it sounded ridiculous. "Martha, please, now is not the time," replied Alexandra, still not taking her eyes off the screens. "He's 12, but he already fixed the entire school's computer, and the neighbors too. He's very smart." Alexandra finally turned around with an expression mixing despair and irritation. "Martha, I have specialized technicians here, people with college degrees, certifications. This isn't child's play." Martha lowered her head, embarrassed. She knew it was a long shot, but she couldn't stand still watching it. For 3 hours since she'd arrived for work, she'd watched the men in suits running back and forth without being able to fix anything. "Sorry, doctor, I just thought that," she murmured, returning to her cleaning cart. "Alexandra!" shouted Howard, the company's oldest partner. "Clients are cancelling contracts. The national energy grid system is completely down. If we don't fix this by noon, we'll lose everything." Panic spread through the office. Employees ran with papers, phones rang non-stop, and the red messages on the screens seemed to mock everyone present. It was as if the entire building were on fire, but a digital fire that no one knew how to extinguish. Alexandra felt her legs weaken. 6 months. Only 6 months since she had taken over the company her father, Richard Harrison, had built over 30 years. He always said she was capable, that she had the necessary intelligence and determination. But in that moment, Alexandra felt like a lost child in an adult world. "How long did the technicians say they need?" asked Howard, nervous. "They don't know. The attack was very sophisticated. All the backups were compromised too," replied Alexandra, her voice choked. "That's impossible. We paid a fortune for the best security system." "Apparently it wasn't that good," murmured Alexandra. Martha kept cleaning, but she couldn't take her ears off the conversation. She knew that company better than many employees. She saw the meetings, the problems, the victories, always silent, always present, like a ghost that went unnoticed in the hallways. She thought of Ethan, her son. Since he was 8, he spent hours tinkering with old computers she got from the junkyard. He said he wanted to understand how things worked on the inside. Martha didn't understand much, but she knew the boy had a special gift. The neighbors always sought him out when something went wrong with their computers. "Dr. Alexandra," she called again, gathering all the courage she had. "Martha, I already said that. Please, just listen. My son Ethan, he discovered that the school's computer had a virus that not even the city's technicians could find. He has a different way of looking at these things. And the situation is so bad that maybe it's worth a try." Alexandra stopped and looked at Martha. She truly looked, perhaps for the first time in 6 months. She saw a woman in her early 40s, hands calloused from so much work, eyes tired but determined. A mother who was offering the only resource she had, her son. "Martha, I understand your good intention, but he lives nearby. 5 minutes, and he'll be here. If he can't help, we lose nothing. But if he can..." Howard approached, overhearing the conversation. "Alexandra, we're out of options. The technicians have already called colleagues in New York. They're all reaching the same conclusion. It will take days to recover everything, if it's even possible." "Days?" "Howard, in days we won't have a company anymore." "Exactly. What harm can it do to let the boy take a look?" Alexandra closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. It was a decision that could be seen as desperation or open-mindedness. In other times, her father always said the best solutions came from the most unexpected places. "All right, Martha, call your son, but make it quick." Martha's face lit up. She picked up her phone with trembling hands and dialed. "Ethan, son, can you come to my work? There's a problem with the computer and—" "Yes, it's serious. Bring your backpack. 5 minutes, okay?" While they waited, Alexandra watched the technicians continue trying to solve the problem. They spoke in codes she didn't understand, worked on programs with strange names, but the result was always the same. Nothing worked. "Alexandra," said Howard quietly, "if this doesn't work, we'll have to consider selling the company while it's still worth something." The words hit Alexandra like a bomb in her stomach. Sell the company that was her father's life dream? The company where he had poured every drop of sweat, every moment of his existence? "No, I won't give up like that," she murmured. "It's not giving up, it's being realistic. If we lose all our clients today, there will be nothing left to save." Martha returned near them, nervous. "He's already coming up. Dr. Alexandra, I know it must seem strange, but my Ethan, he has something special. Since he was little, he sees things others don't." "How so?" asked Alexandra. "Once the school library computer started getting slow, the city technicians said it was a virus, reformatted everything, but it was still slow. Ethan looked at it for 5 minutes and figured out someone was using the school network to download movies in the middle of the night. He found out who it was and how they were doing it." Howard and Alexandra exchanged a look. It was a simple story, but impressive for a 12-year-old boy. The door opened and Ethan entered. He was a skinny boy with messy brown hair and curious eyes. He carried an old-school backpack and looked sleepy, as if he had just woken up. "Hi, Mom," he said, looking around with interest. "Wow, so many computers. Ethan, this is Dr. Alexandra, who I always talk about, and this is Dr. Howard. They have a very serious problem with the computers." Ethan greeted them politely and approached the screens. His expression changed completely when he saw the error messages. What kind of error is this?" he murmured, more to himself. "Ethan, don't touch anything yet," Martha warned. "Let them explain what happened." But Ethan was already absorbed, reading the messages on the screen. Alexandra watched the boy, trying to understand what she saw in him. There was a concentration not common in 12-year-olds. "It was an attack, right?" said Ethan, without taking his eyes off the screen. The technicians stopped what they were doing and looked at the boy. "How do you know?" asked one of them. "These aren't normal error messages. Someone left them here on purpose, like a signature," replied Ethan, opening his backpack and pulling out an old notebook. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out." Now continuing, Alexandra felt something strange in her chest. It was as if she were watching something that shouldn't be possible, but was happening right before her eyes. "Ethan, do you think you can help?" she asked, crouching down to be at the boy's eye level. "I can try, Auntie, but first I need to understand how the system works. Can you show me the network structure?" The technicians exchanged glances, surprised by the boy's technical language. "Of course," said one of them, leading Ethan to the server room. Martha followed behind, nervous. She had never seen her son in action on something so big. At home he fixed old computers and helped neighbors, but this was different. Millions of dollars were at stake here. "Mom, relax," said Ethan, sensing her tension. "I'm just going to take a look first." In the server room, Ethan was impressed by the amount of equipment. His eyes sparkled like a child's in a toy store. "Wow, this is just like the videos I watch on YouTube," he murmured. "What videos?" asked Alexandra. "There are some channels that teach about networks, security, that kind of stuff. I watch whenever I have leftover internet data for the month." The simplicity of the answer touched Alexandra in an unexpected way. While she paid for expensive courses for employees, this boy was teaching himself with free videos. Ethan connected his old notebook to one of the servers and began typing commands. The technicians watched over his shoulder, curious. "What are you doing?" asked one of them. "Trying to see where they got in. Every attack leaves a trace, you just have to know where to look," replied Ethan, focused. Within minutes, He had identified several entry points that the technicians hadn't been able to find. "Here, look," he said, pointing to the screen. "They didn't just get in once. They've been here for weeks, preparing everything." "What do you mean?" asked Alexandra, feeling a chill. "Someone who knows the system well passed them information. Look here," Ethan showed a series of codes. They knew exactly where to attack to cause the most damage. The silence in the room was heavy. The implication was clear. There was a traitor inside the company. "Is that possible?" asked Howard. "Of course it is," replied Ethan. "Most big attacks happen like that. Someone on the inside helps the outsiders." Alexandra felt as if the ground were collapsing beneath her feet. It wasn't enough to deal with the hacker attack. Now she discovered that someone on her own team was involved. "Ethan, can you find out who it was?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Maybe, but it'll take time. And you said you're in a hurry, right?" the boy answered. "I can first try to recover the systems and then investigate who did this. How much time do you need?" Ethan looked around, assessing the situation. "About 2 hours, maybe 3, but there's a problem. If they're monitoring, they'll notice someone's trying to recover everything, and they might attack again, even worse." The tension in the room increased. It was like defusing a bomb knowing the terrorist was watching. "What do you suggest?" asked Howard. "First, we need to cut all external connections, isolate the network. Then, I'll clean everything up and restore the backups they couldn't destroy. But if we cut the connections, clients won't be able to access anything," protested one of the technicians. "So what? They can't access anything anyway," replied Ethan, with the simple logic of a child. Alexandra almost smiled despite the dramatic situation. The boy was right. "That makes sense," she said. "Howard, authorize cutting all external connections." "Alexandra, that's a very risky decision." "Howard, look around. Could it get any worse than this?" While the technicians carried out the orders, Ethan continued analyzing the systems. Martha remained silent, impressed to see her son commanding adults with decades of experience. "Mom, can I get a soda?" asked Ethan without taking his eyes off the screen. That common, so childish question, in the middle of all that tension, made everyone laugh. It was like a reminder that, no matter how talented he was, Ethan was still a child. "Of course, son. Martha, I'll have someone get it," said Alexandra. "No need, Doctor. I know where the vending machines are," replied Martha. While mother and son stepped out for a few minutes, Alexandra and Howard spoke privately. "Alexandra, that boy really seems to know what he's doing," said Howard. "I know, but it makes me think, why did we never pay attention to him before? Martha has worked here for 10 years, and I didn't even know she had a son." "You're right. We live so much in our own world that we forget about the people around us." When Ethan returned, he was more animated. He had drunk a soda and eaten a snack that his mother always carried in her bag. "Aunt Alexandra, can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course, Ethan." "Why don't you invest in basic security training for all employees? I saw that some people here use super easy passwords." The question took Alexandra by surprise. It was obvious, but no one had thought of it. "How do you know that?" "Oh, I was looking at the access logs. Some people use 123456 as a password. And worse, there's a guy who uses the company name as his password." The technicians exchanged glances, embarrassed. It was true, and everyone knew it. "Ethan, this is very important," said Alexandra. "Can you write down everything you find that's strange? We'll use it to improve our security." "Sure," replied the boy excitedly. In the next few hours, Ethan worked with a concentration that impressed everyone. He not only recovered the systems, but also identified vulnerabilities that had existed for years. "How did you learn all this?" asked one of the technicians. "YouTube, forums, library books," replied Ethan without stopping typing. "And by practicing on old computers my mom manages to get." Martha smiled, proud. She always knew her son was special, but she never imagined he could help with something so important. "Martha," called Alexandra, "can I speak with you for a minute?" They stepped aside a bit and Alexandra lowered her voice. "I want to apologize. For all these years, I never really paid attention to you. I never asked about your life, your family." "It's okay, Doctor. I know you're all very busy." No, it's not okay. You've worked here for 10 years. You're an honest, dedicated person, and I treated you as invisible. That's going to change." Martha didn't know what to say. She had never received words like that from a boss. And about Ethan, he's extraordinary. You must be very proud of him. I am. He's always been different. Since he was little, he saw things I didn't see, understood things I didn't understand. "What's it like raising a child alone?" asked Alexandra, genuinely curious. "Hard. Ethan's father left when he was 3. Said he didn't want the responsibility. Since then, it's just been him and me." The story touched Alexandra deeply. She, who had always had everything, couldn't imagine the strength needed to raise a child alone. "Do you work anywhere else besides here?" "Yes, in the afternoons I clean a school, and at night I do janitorial work at a medical office. On weekends, I sometimes pick up odd jobs." "Martha, you work 7 days a week. It's what it takes to pay the rent and give Ethan an education. He takes English at a community school, and I want him to have all the opportunities I never had." Alexandra felt a mix of admiration and shame. Admiration for Martha's dedication, shame for her own lack of social awareness. "I did it!" shouted Ethan suddenly. Everyone rushed over to him. On the screen, the systems were coming back online one by one. "Really?" asked Howard, incredulous. "Yes, I managed to recover all the backups that weren't corrupted, and on top of that I identified several improvements we can make," replied Ethan, smiling. The relief in the office was palpable. Employees began to applaud, and Alexandra felt tears in her eyes. "Ethan, you saved our company," she said, kneeling beside the boy. "Oh, it was no big deal. It was even fun," he replied modestly. "No big deal. Ethan, you did in 3 hours what our technicians couldn't do in a whole day. It's just that sometimes people get too focused on one thing and forget to look at others. I learned it's always good to take a step back and see the whole problem." The boy's simple wisdom impressed everyone. Alexandra realized she was learning more about leadership and problem-solving from a 12-year-old boy than in years of college. "And about who caused the attack, were you able to find out?" asked Howard. Ethan became serious. "Yes, I was, but it's complicated." "How so?" "The person who leaked the information still works here, and it's someone you trust very much." The mood in the room changed completely. The joy of the system recovery was replaced by the tension of knowing there was a traitor among them. "Who is it?" asked Alexandra, her heart racing. "Are you sure you want to know? Because it will be hard to believe." "Ethan, it's very important. Our company can't take this risk again." The boy sighed and clicked on his computer, showing a series of logs and evidence. It was Ms. Margaret from accounting. She's been leaking information for over 2 months. The silence was total. Margaret had worked at the company for 15 years. She was considered part of the family. She had been hired by Alexandra's father personally. "That's impossible," said Howard. "Margaret is like a second mother to all of us." "I know it's hard to believe," replied Ethan, "but the digital trail doesn't lie. Look here, she accessed confidential files outside of work hours, copied data to a flash drive, and had email communication with suspicious people." Alexandra felt as if she were in a nightmare. First the attack, now discovering that a trusted person was behind it all. "Why would she do that?" she murmured. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." "I don't know, Auntie. That's something you'll have to find out by talking to her," replied Ethan. Alexandra looked around. Margaret hadn't arrived yet. It was Monday, and she always arrived a little later. "When she gets here, we'll talk to her," said Howard. "But first we have to notify the clients that the systems are working again." "Howard, call everyone. I want all our clients to know we've already solved the problem," said Alexandra. While Howard made the calls, Alexandra watched Ethan continue working. The boy was now implementing security improvements that even the specialized technicians hadn't thought of. "Ethan, can I ask you something?" said Alexandra. "Sure. What do you want to be when you grow up?" The boy stopped typing and thought for a moment. "I want to help people with technology, like using computers to solve real problems, not just for games or social media." "You're already doing that." "Yeah, right?" he said, smiling. "It's cool when you can use what you know to help." Alexandra felt a different emotion. She was seeing a living example of how talent, when it finds opportunity, can accomplish incredible things. Ethan, would you like to keep learning about this? Take more advanced courses? Of course. But, he looked at his mother. It's kind of expensive, right, Mum? Martha felt awkward. Son, we'll talk about this later at home. Martha, can I speak with both of you? Said Alexandra, calling mother and son for a private conversation. They stepped away from the others, and Alexandra took a deep breath before speaking. I want to make a proposal to you. Ethan, would you like to do an internship here at the company? Part-time, so it doesn't interfere with school, but where you could learn more about technology and help our team. Ethan's eyes lit up, but Martha grew worried. Dr. Alexandra, that's very generous, but Ethan is still a child. I know, Martha. That's why it would be very well planned. Ethan would come here 3 times a week after school, and on Saturday mornings, he would work with our technology team, learning and helping at the same time. And how would that work? Asked Martha, cautious. We would pay him a study grant, enough to cover advanced courses and materials. And for you, Martha, I have another proposal. Martha waited, nervous. I want to offer you an administrative position. You know this company better than many people who work here. You've seen how things work for 10 years. You know all the employees. You know where the problems are. Doctor, I don't have the education for that. Martha, you raised a genius on your own. You work 3 jobs and still find time to worry about others. That's worth more than any diploma. Martha had tears in her eyes. She never imagined she might one day receive an offer like that. Can I think about it? She asked, emotional. Of course, but don't take too long because I'm going to need both of you to help me overhaul our entire security policy. Ethan couldn't contain his excitement. Mom, that would be amazing. I could learn so much here. Son, let's talk about it calmly at home, okay? At that moment, Margaret arrived at the office. She was a woman in her 60s with greying hair, always friendly to everyone. Alexandra felt her stomach churn upon seeing her. Good morning, everyone. Wow, it's busy today. Did something happen? Said Margaret, innocently. Alexandra and Howard exchanged a look. How to approach this situation? Margaret, can you come to my office, please? Said Alexandra, trying to keep her voice steady. Of course, dear. Is there a problem? As they walked to the office, Ethan whispered to his mother, Mom, I want to accept this could be the chance of a lifetime. Ethan, these big things sometimes don't work out. What if they change their minds later? Mum, Aunt Alexandra seems like a good person, and I really want to learn more. Martha looked at her son. In his eyes, she saw the same determination he'd always had to succeed in life. Maybe it was time to trust. In Alexandra's office, the conversation with Margaret was turning into one of the young entrepreneur's most difficult. Margaret, I need to ask you something very serious, and I want you to be honest with me. Of course, Alexandra, go ahead. Did you pass confidential company information to people outside? Margaret paled. Her hands began to tremble slightly. Alexandra, I don't know what you're talking about. Margaret, we have all the evidence. Computer logs, emails, everything. I just want to understand why you did it. The woman collapsed into the chair, covering her face with her hands. How did you find out? That doesn't matter. What matters is understanding why. You've worked here for 15 years, Margaret. My father trusted you like family. Margaret began to cry. Alexandra, I regret it so much. So much. So it's true? Yes. But I can explain. Alexandra took a deep breath, preparing to hear a justification she probably wouldn't be able to accept. My grandson, he's very sick. He needs surgery that costs $100,000. My daughter is a single mother earning minimum wage. The Public Health Service said the wait could take years. Alexandra felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Margaret, I know it doesn't justify it. I know I betrayed your trust. But when they offered me that money, I thought of my grandson, of my desperate daughter. Who offered you the money? A man who said he worked for a competing company. Said he just wanted basic commercial information, nothing that could really harm you. Margaret, you know this almost destroyed our company, right? I didn't know. They said it was just to know about our clients, nothing more. When I saw what happened this morning, I almost couldn't come to work. Alexandra stayed silent for a few minutes, trying to process everything. It was an impossible situation. Margaret had betrayed the company, but for a reason any mother or grandmother would understand. How much did they pay you? 50,000, half of what I need for the surgery. And you really believed it was just commercial information? Alexandra, I wanted to believe, because I really needed that money. I know that makes me a terrible person, but I couldn't think of anything else besides my grandson. Margaret's honesty made everything even harder. Alexandra found herself facing a complex moral dilemma: how to punish someone who acted out of love for family. Margaret, you understand I'll have to fire you, right? I know, and I deserve it. I just ask that you don't involve the police. I'll return the money, I'll do whatever it takes. How are you going to return $50,000? I don't know, but I'll figure it out. Alexandra fell silent again. Outside the room, she knew Ethan and Martha were waiting for an answer about the proposal she had made. Margaret, give me a few minutes to think. Can you wait outside? When she was alone, Alexandra rested her head on the desk. In a single day, she had faced a hacker attack, discovered extraordinary talent in Ethan, offered a job to Martha, and now needed to decide Margaret's fate. She left the room and called Howard for a private conversation. Howard, I need your opinion. What do we do about Margaret? Alexandra, she betrayed our trust. That almost destroyed the company. I know, but she did it to save her grandson's life. And does that justify it? It doesn't justify it, but it explains it. Howard, if it were your family, wouldn't you do the same? Howard sighed. Maybe. But that doesn't change the fact that we can't trust her anymore. I agree. But is there really no way to handle this that's fair to everyone? While they were talking, Ethan timidly approached. Excuse me, Aunt Alexandra. Can I say something? Of course, Ethan. I heard you talking about Ms. Margaret and, well, I had an idea. What idea? What? You said she did it for her sick grandson, right? And that she needs another 50,000 for the surgery. Yes, but what if the company loaned her the money, like she would work to pay it back little by little? Alexandra and Howard looked at each other. It was a simple proposal, but one they hadn't considered. Ethan, she betrayed our trust. How could we trust her again? Sometimes people do wrong things for the right reasons. My mother always taught me that. And if Ms. Margaret really wants to make amends, maybe a second chance is good for everyone. The boy's wisdom once again impressed the adults. But Ethan, if we give Margaret a second chance, how do we ensure this doesn't happen again? Simple. We create better controls, limit her access to confidential information, and most importantly, show that the company truly cares about its employees. Howard shook his head. This boy should teach human resources. Alexandra smiled despite the tension. Howard, what do you think of the idea? It's risky, but maybe it's the right thing to do. Then let's do it this way. Margaret stays with the company, in a position with less access to confidential information. The company will lend her the 50,000 she needs, to be deducted gradually from her salary. And she participates in a transparency program where she'll have to report any suspicious external contact. And if she doesn't accept, then she chooses. Accept the conditions or face the legal consequences of what she did. Ethan smiled. I think she'll accept. No one wants to harm their family out of pride. Alexandra called Margaret back into the room. The lady entered with eyes red from so much crying. Margaret, Howard and I have decided to give you a second chance. Margaret looked in disbelief. What do you mean? Alexandra explained the entire proposal. The loan, the new work conditions, the transparency program. You would do this for me? After everything I did? Margaret, you made a serious mistake, but you did it out of love for your grandson. All of us here have family, and perhaps in the same situation, we might have done the same thing. But I don't deserve. It's not about deserving, Margaret. It's about giving you the chance to redeem yourself. Do you accept the conditions? I accept. "Of course I accept," said Margaret through tears of relief. "Then it's decided. You return to work tomorrow in the new position. And Margaret, thank you for being honest about everything." When Margaret left the room, Alexandra felt strangely light. She had made a difficult decision, but one that felt right. "Howard, I think we just learned an important lesson about leadership." "What?" "Sometimes, the best decision isn't the easiest or the most obvious one. It's the one that takes into account all the people involved." "You're becoming quite the leader, Alexandra. Your father would be proud." The mention of her father brought tears to Alexandra's eyes. 6 months after his death, she finally felt up to the legacy she had received. "Now shall we talk to Martha and Ethan about the proposal we made?" They called mother and son, who were waiting anxiously. "Martha, Ethan, have you thought about the proposal?" "Dr. Alexandra," said Martha, "I accept, but with one condition." "What?" "I want a trial period, 3 months. If I can't do a good job, I'll go back to cleaning without any problem." "Martha, you're going to do an excellent job, I'm sure of it." "And me, Aunt Alexandra, can I do the internship?" "Of course, Ethan. You'll work with our technology team. And do you know what your first project will be?" "What?" "Creating a security system that detects when someone is accessing confidential information in a suspicious way, so we never have a situation like today's again." Ethan's eyes lit up. "That's going to be amazing. I already have lots of ideas." Martha looked at her son, then at Alexandra. "Doctor, I don't know how to thank you." "Martha, today you and your son saved our company. It's us who have to thank you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the weeks that followed, the transformation in the company was remarkable. Ethan worked 3 afternoons a week, always full of innovative ideas. His presence brought a new energy to the entire technology team. Martha started in the administrative department, initially shy, but soon showing a deep understanding of how the company worked that surprised everyone. Her 10 years of quietly observing had given her valuable insights into efficiency and human relationships. Margaret returned to work in an accounting assistant position with limited access to confidential information. On the first day, she sought out Alexandra personally. "Alexandra, I want you to know I'll work for the rest of my life to deserve this second chance. Margaret, you don't need to spend the rest of your life atoning. You made a mistake, took responsibility, and are now working to make amends. That's what matters." "How is your grandson?" asked Martha, who had approached. "Much better. The surgery was a success. The doctors said he will make a full recovery." "That's great," said Ethan, arriving with his notebook under his arm. "Sometimes the bad things that happen allow good things to happen too." The boy's simple philosophy touched everyone. In a few weeks, he had become a sort of company mascot, always welcome in any department. A month after the incident, Alexandra called Ethan for a special talk. "Ethan, I want to show you something." She took him to a room that was being renovated. "What do you think of this room?" "Cool, very spacious." "What's it for?" "Technological Innovation Lab." "Your lab?" Ethan's eyes widened. "Mine. Yours and the team you will coordinate. I'm creating a new division in the company, focused on innovative technological solutions. And I want you to be the technical coordinator." "But Aunt Alexandra, I'm only 12. "Ethan, age is just a number. You've already proven you have talent and vision that many adults don't. Obviously, you'll have supervision and support, but the main ideas will be yours." Ethan was silent for a few moments, processing the magnitude of the proposal. "Can I call my mum to see?" "Of course." When Martha arrived and saw the room, she was moved. "Dr. Alexandra, is this serious?" "Very serious, Martha. Ethan will have a team of 3 people working with him, a budget for equipment and total freedom to create." "Mom, can you believe it? I'm going to have my own lab." Martha hugged her son, tears in her eyes. "Son, you deserve all this and more. It's not just my doing, Mom. If you hadn't had the courage to suggest me that day, none of this would have happened." 3 months later, The technological innovation division led by Ethan had already developed 3 products that were gaining attention in the market: a fraud detection system, an ultra-secure backup platform, and a digital security training program for small businesses. "Howard," said Alexandra, reviewing the reports, "the company's revenue has grown 40% since we created Ethan's division. It's impressive. Who would have thought a 12-year-old boy would revolutionize our business? You know what's most amazing? It's not just his technical talent, it's the way he sees things, always thinking about how to help people. Indeed, all the products developed by Ethan's team had one thing in common. They were accessible to small businesses that couldn't afford big consulting fees." "Aunt Alexandra," said Ethan, entering the room with one of the projects, "I finished that system you asked for." "Which one?" "The one that detects when employees might be going through financial difficulties, so the company can help before they do something desperate." Alexandra was impressed. Ethan had created a system that analyzed behavioral patterns, excessive overtime, and other indicators to identify employees who might be in a vulnerable situation. "Ethan, that's brilliant. How did you get that idea?" "Thinking about Ms. Margaret. If someone had noticed she was desperate, maybe none of that would have happened." "You're right. How many companies do you think would be interested in this system?" "Lots. Everyone wants to avoid internal problems, right?" Howard shook his head in admiration. "This boy thinks like a born entrepreneur." 6 months after the hacker incident, the company underwent a complete transformation, not just in terms of technology and security, but mainly in organizational culture. Alexandra instituted monthly meetings where all employees, regardless of position, could suggest improvements. She created an emergency fund to help employees facing financial difficulties and, more importantly, established that the company would value talent and dedication, regardless of social background or formal education. "Martha," said Alexandra during one of those meetings, "I want to promote you to administrative coordinator. But Dr. Alexandra, I don't have a college degree. Martha, you have something far more valuable: practical experience and a human perspective. Over the last 6 months, your suggestions have improved our efficiency by 20%. "It's true, Mom," said Ethan. "You know this company better than any outside consultant." Martha's promotion ceremony was a special moment for the entire company. Employees who had worked there for years were moved to see a colleague they had always respected finally receive the recognition she deserved. "Everyone," said Martha during her thank you speech, "I want to thank you all, especially Dr. Alexandra, for giving me this opportunity. But I want to share this recognition with all the people who work in jobs that are considered lesser. Remember, no job is small when it's done with dignity." Martha's words deeply touched everyone present. Alexandra realized she had learned more about leadership in the last few months than in years of management courses. That same day, Ethan received a proposal that would change his life forever. "Ethan," said Alexandra, "we've received a proposal from a university in New York. They want to offer you a full scholarship for a special Young Talents program." "What do you mean?" "It's a program where minors with exceptional abilities can study advanced subjects while completing their regular schooling. You would study programming, computer engineering, entrepreneurship." Ethan was excited but soon grew worried. "But what about my job here? And my mum?" "Ethan, this is a unique opportunity, and you don't have to choose between one thing and the other. You can continue working here remotely, developing projects for our company while you study." Martha approached her son. "Son, this is the chance we've always dreamed of. You can have the best education possible." "But Mom, what about you? I don't want to leave you alone." "Ethan, you won't be leaving me alone. You'll give me the greatest pride of my life, seeing my son fulfill all his potential." The conversation between mother and son was touching. Alexandra discreetly withdrew, allowing them to talk in private. "Mom, all of this feels like a dream. 6 months ago, we could barely pay the rent, and now you have the chance to go very far, son. Farther than I ever imagined possible. Will you come with me to New York?" "If you want. Dr. Alexandra said she can transfer me to the branch there." Ethan hugged his mother, emotional. "Mom, you are the strongest person I know. Everything I achieve in life will be because of you." No, son, it will be because of you. I only gave you opportunities. The talent is all yours. When they returned to speak with Alexandra, the decision was made. Aunt Alexandra, I accept the scholarship, but I want to keep working for the company, even if it's from afar. Ethan, you will always have a place here. This company owes a lot to you and your mother. No, Aunt. We owe a lot to you. You gave us the chance we needed. Howard, who had followed the entire conversation, was moved. Alexandra, do you realize what happened here? In 6 months, we transformed not just our company, but the lives of several people. Howard, I think they are the ones who transformed our company, and our lives too. It was true. The company had not only survived the hacker attack, but had become stronger, more humane, and more innovative. The employees worked with more motivation, knowing their talents would be recognized regardless of their background. 1 year after the incident, the company was invited to participate at a conference on innovation and social responsibility. Alexandra chose Ethan to deliver the keynote presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Ethan, now 13 years old, but speaking with the maturity of someone much older, "I want to tell you a story. The story of how a hacker attack almost destroyed a company, but ended up transforming the lives of many people." The audience listened attentively as Ethan recounted the events of that fateful day, his mother's courage in suggesting his help, and how Alexandra had the wisdom to accept help from wherever it came. "The most important thing wasn't that I managed to solve the technical problem. The most important thing was that the people involved understood that talent and human worth do not depend on diplomas or social background." Ethan's words made an impact on the audience. Many business people present began to question their own hiring and talent development policies. Today, our company has a program that identifies talent in underprivileged communities. We have partnerships with public schools to offer technology courses. And most importantly, we have a culture where every person is valued for what they can contribute. When Ethan finished his presentation, the audience rose in a prolonged standing ovation. At the back of the auditorium, Martha and Alexandra watched, moved. "Martha," whispered Alexandra, "you raised an extraordinary young man. Dr. Alexandra, we all raised him. You, me, the whole company. It was a team effort." After the presentation, several business people approached Ethan, wanting to learn more about the projects he was developing. Partnership offers and investments came from all sides. "Aunt Alexandra," said Ethan later, "so many people interested in what we do." "Ethan, do you realize the impact you're causing? Your story is inspiring other companies to rethink how they treat their employees." "That's so cool. You mean what happened to us can help other people too?" "Exactly. Sometimes a story of overcoming inspires changes much bigger than we imagine." That evening, during the conference's closing dinner, Alexandra made a special toast. "I want to toast to all the people who had the courage to give chances to those who seemed unlikely, and especially to Ethan and Martha, who taught me that the best solutions sometimes come from the most unexpected places." The whole table toasted, moved. It was more than a professional celebration. It was the recognition that sometimes a simple gesture of giving an opportunity can change lives forever. 2 years later, Ethan had become a known figure in the tech world. At 15, he had already developed several systems being used by hundreds of companies. His story had been told in magazines, newspapers, and television programs. Martha, in turn, had graduated in business administration through a degree program offered by the company itself. She was now one of the most respected executives, known for her humanized vision of business. Margaret continued working at the company, and her grandson had fully recovered. She became one of the most dedicated employees, always willing to help new employees going through difficulties. "Alexandra," said Howard during an annual review meeting, "our company has grown 300% in the last 2 years. We have become a national benchmark in technological innovation and social responsibility." "Howard, the most important thing isn't the numbers. It's knowing we changed many people's lives for the better." "I agree. And it all started with Martha having the courage to suggest her son could help. And with me having the humility to accept that a waitress could have something valuable to offer." That same day, Ethan arrived from university with special news. "Aunt Alexandra, I received an incredible offer." "What is it this time?" she asked, smiling. Ethan received offers constantly. "An American company wants to hire me to develop security systems for them. Salary of $1 million a year." Alexandra felt her heart tighten. She knew that one day Ethan might receive offers he couldn't refuse. "And what did you tell them?" "That I'll think about it. But first, I want to talk to you and my mum." "Ethan, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You can't refuse it because of us." "It's not because of you, it's that I have other plans." "What plans?" "I want to start my own company, focused on developing social technologies, systems that help companies be fairer, more humane." Alexandra was moved. It was typical of Ethan to think first about how he could help others. "And where do you plan to open this company?" "Right here. I want to partner with you. Use our story as an example that it's possible to grow economically while being socially responsible." "Ethan, are you sure an offer of $1 million?" "Aunt Alexandra, you taught me that success isn't measured only in money. It's measured in the good we can do for others." Martha, who had been listening to the conversation, hugged her son proudly. "Son, whatever your decision, I support you. You've always known what you want." "Mum, I want to stay here. Our story started here, and it's here that I want to continue it." Ethan's decision to refuse the $1 million offer and stay in the country caused a major media stir. Many questioned if it had been a sensible choice. In an interview, Ethan explained his decision. "Money is important, but purpose is even more important. I want to use my talent to transform the reality of my country, not to enrich companies that are already rich." The maturity of his answer impressed everyone. Ethan was becoming not just a technological talent, but an important voice in discussions about corporate social responsibility. 3 years passed. Alexandra's company had become one of the country's biggest social responsibility success stories. Ethan had opened his social technology company, which developed solutions for specific local problems. Martha had been invited to give lectures on leadership at universities and companies. Her journey from waitress to executive inspired people across the country. "Everyone," said Alexandra during a special meeting, "I want to announce some news." Everyone paid attention. "I've decided to create the Richard Harrison Foundation in honor of my father. The goal is to identify and develop talent in underprivileged communities, offering education and job opportunities." "Alexandra, that's a fantastic idea," said Howard. "And I want to invite Ethan and Martha to be the general coordinators of the foundation." Ethan and Martha looked at each other, moved. "Aunt Alexandra, it would be an honor," said Ethan. "Dr. Alexandra, I accept with great pride," said Martha. "The foundation will work like this. We'll identify talented young people in public schools, offer technology courses, and most importantly, provide real job opportunities. We want other families to have the same chance that Ethan and Martha had." The news of the foundation's creation was received with enthusiasm by the whole society. Business people, educators, and politicians praised the initiative. In its first year of operation, the foundation had already benefited over 1,000 young people, offering courses, internships, and job opportunities. Many of them followed in Ethan's footsteps, developing innovative solutions for social problems. "Ethan," said Alexandra, 5 years after the hacker incident, "do you realize what we've managed to build?" "Yes, Aunt Alexandra. And the coolest part is that it all started with my mum having the courage to speak up, and with me having the wisdom to listen, and with Ms. Margaret teaching us that people can redeem themselves, and with Howard supporting me in difficult decisions. Yeah, it really was a lot of people's work." At that moment, Martha approached with a newspaper in her hands. "Guys, have you seen this? An article about us came out in the national magazine." The report's headline was, "How a Hacker Attack Changed a Company and Transformed Lives, the Success Story Inspiring America." The article told the whole journey, from that first dramatic day to the current success of the company and the foundation. "Mom," said Ethan, "do you remember when we were afraid we couldn't pay the rent?" "I remember, son. It feels like another life." "It wasn't another life, Mom. It was the same life, just with different opportunities." "You're right. The important thing is to never forget where we came from, and to always remember that other people deserve the same opportunities we had. Alexandra watched the conversation between mother and son, moved. They had maintained their humility and sense of social responsibility even with all the success. "Everyone," she said, "I have one last surprise for you." "What is it?" they all asked, curious. "The mayor contacted me. He wants to hire us to modernize all the city hall systems, prioritizing the hiring of talented young people from underprivileged communities." "Really?" asked Ethan, excited. "Very serious. It would be the biggest contract in our company's history, and a chance to transform the entire public administration of the city." "That's incredible," said Martha. "Imagine how many young people we can help." "Exactly. And you know the best part? The mayor said the proposal came about after he read our story in the newspaper. He said he was inspired by how we handled people and opportunities. The news was extraordinary, not just for the value of the contract, but for the potential social impact it represented. In the months that followed, the company began working on modernizing the city hall systems. Ethan developed solutions that made public services more efficient and accessible to the population. Martha coordinated an internship program that gave opportunities to hundreds of young people from underprivileged communities. Many of them were later hired by the City Hall itself. Margaret, now in a position of trust at the company, coordinated a program to support employees in financial difficulty, preventing situations like hers from repeating. "Alexandra," said Howard 2 years later, "our company has become a national model. We have delegations from all over the country coming to see our work." "Howard, the most impressive thing is that all this started so simply, a waitress suggesting her son could help, and a young businesswoman having the courage to accept the suggestion." "It wasn't courage, Howard, it was desperation," said Alexandra, laughing. "Sometimes desperation forces us to make the best decisions of our lives." That same day, Ethan arrived with news that surprised everyone. "Guys, I have news." "What now?" asked Alexandra, accustomed to Ethan's constant surprises. "I've been invited to give a talk at the UN about technology and social inclusion." Everyone was stunned. "At the UN?" asked Martha, incredulous. "Yes, in New York. I'm going to represent the United States at a world conference on social innovation." Alexandra felt her chest swell with pride. The boy she had met at 12, shy and nervous, was now being invited to speak at one of the most important forums in the world. "Ethan, that's extraordinary," she said, moved. "And do you know what I'm going to talk about in the lecture?" asked Ethan, smiling. "Tell us," said Martha. "I'm going to talk about how the best ideas arise when we give opportunities to people who are normally overlooked. I'm going to tell our story." "Our story?" asked Margaret, who had approached. "All of ours. Mine, my mother's, yours, Aunt Alexandra's, Dr. Howard's. How each one contributed to creating something greater than the sum of its parts." Ethan's generosity in sharing the recognition with everyone deeply moved the team. "Ethan," said Alexandra, "do you want someone to go with you to New York?" "Actually, I want all of you to go. The story belongs to all of us, so everyone should be there to tell it." Ethan's proposal was typical of him, inclusive and generous. 2 weeks later, Alexandra, Martha, Ethan, Margaret and Howard were on a plane to New York. It was the first international trip for most of them. "Son," said Martha, looking out the airplane window, "can you believe where we've gotten?" "I can, Mom. You always taught me that with hard work and honesty, anything is possible." "No, Ethan, I taught you not to give up. But you were the one who figured out how to turn talent into opportunity." "No, Mom. It was all of you. Each one contributed in their own way." On the day of the UN speech, Ethan took the stage with the maturity of someone much older. At 18, he had become one of the most respected voices in social technology in Brazil. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I want to tell you a Brazilian story. A story about how a hacker attack nearly destroyed a company, but ended up creating a model of social inclusion that is transforming lives across my country." The audience, composed of diplomats, business people, and activists from around the world, listened attentively as Ethan recounted the events of that fateful day 7 years earlier. The most important part of this story is not the technology involved. It's the courage ordinary people had to make extraordinary choices. My mother, a waitress, had the courage to suggest that I could help. Alexandra, a young businesswoman, had the humility to accept help from where she least expected it. Margaret, an employee who made a mistake, had the honesty to take responsibility. Ethan's words made an impact on the audience. Many were visibly moved. Today, our company employs over 1,000 people, 40% of them from underprivileged communities. Our foundation has already benefited more than 10,000 young people. And all of this started with people having the courage to give opportunities to those who seemed unlikely. When Ethan finished his presentation, the ovation was prolonged and enthusiastic. Several delegates approached afterward, wanting to learn more details about the Brazilian model of social inclusion through technology. "Ethan," said the representative from France, "could your model be replicated in other countries?" "Of course. But the most important thing is not the technology. It's the change in mindset. It's understanding that talent knows no social class and that the best solutions sometimes come from the most unexpected places. And how do you ensure the sustainability of the model?" "Simple. By making it good for business too. Our company has grown 2,000% since adopting social inclusion policies. We've discovered that diversity is not only morally right, it's economically smart." Ethan's answers impressed everyone. He had managed to articulate complex concepts about corporate social responsibility in a simple and clear way. After the conference, the Brazilian delegation was invited to dinners and meetings with representatives from various countries interested in implementing similar models. "Martha," said Alexandra during one of the dinners, "do you have any idea of the impact your courage to speak up that day is having on the world?" "Dr. Alexandra, I only did what any mother would do. I tried to help with what I had." "Martha, you did much more than that. You broke social barriers, opened paths, created possibilities." "No, Doctor, we all did that together." Martha's humility, even after all the success, continued to impress everyone. Back in Brazil, the team was received as heroes. The national media extensively covered the success of the presentation at the UN, and the Brazilian model of social inclusion through technology began to be studied at universities worldwide. "Team," said Alexandra during a meeting shortly after their return, "we have hundreds of invitations to replicate our model in other cities and states." "That's wonderful," said Ethan. "How many more people can we help?" "Exactly. But I want us to decide together. How do we grow without losing the essence of what we built?" It was an important question. Growth could bring opportunities, but also risks of diluting the values that had made the project special. "I think," said Martha, "that we should grow slowly, carefully, training people who truly understand our values, not just our methods." "I agree," said Ethan. "It's better to help a few people well than to help many people poorly." "And what about you, Howard and Margaret? What do you think?" "Alexandra," said Howard, "I think we should only accept the invitations where we are sure we can do quality work." "I agree with Howard," said Margaret. "Our reputation was built gradually with care. We can't risk losing it because of overly rapid growth." The group's collective wisdom once again impressed Alexandra. Each person contributed a different perspective, but all were focused on the same goal: maintaining the quality and values of their work. Over the next 2 years, the company expanded its operations to 5 more states, always following the model of careful growth they had decided upon. Each new branch was carefully planned and implemented, focusing on local hiring and developing regional talent. Ethan, now 20 years old, had become one of the country's most respected figures in the area of social technology. His lectures filled auditoriums, and his books on innovation and inclusion became bestsellers. Martha had completed a master's degree in administration, specializing in human resource management. Her research on workplace diversity was cited at universities worldwide. "Mom," said Ethan during a family dinner, "do you remember our life before that day?" "I do, son. We were happy, but we dreamed of more opportunities." "Do you miss it?" "Miss what?" "The simplicity, when our biggest worry was paying the rent." Martha thought for a moment. "You know, son, I don't miss the financial struggles, but I miss when our victories were small and simple, managing to pay the bills, buying you an ice cream. I understand. The victories were smaller, but perhaps more intense. Exactly. Today we have bigger victories, but sometimes we forget to celebrate them properly. The conversation made Ethan reflect on how success had changed their lives. It had brought many good things, but also some losses. Mom, we should do something to not lose that simplicity. How so? I don't know. Maybe create special moments, just the two of us, where we can be just mother and son, not executive and businessman. The idea touched Martha deeply. You know what a good idea that is, son. How about we start having lunch together once a week, just the two of us, without talking about work? Perfect, and at the simplest place we can find. From that day on, mother and son began having their special lunches. They were sacred moments where they could talk about life, dreams and memories, away from the pressures of professional success. Alexandra, observing the dynamic between Ethan and Martha, also began to reflect on her own life. Professional success was rewarding, but she sometimes felt lonely. Howard, she said one day, do you think we've lost something with all this growth? How so? The intimacy, the closeness we had when we were a small company. Today we have 1,000 employees, multiple branches. Sometimes I feel we've lost personal touch. Alexandra, it's natural for that to happen with growth, but I think we still maintain the essential values. Do we? When was the last time you had a real conversation with a new employee, that you learned about someone's personal life on the team? Howard thought, and realized Alexandra was right. The growth had created distances that didn't exist before. What do you suggest? I don't know yet, but I think we need to find ways to keep the human closeness, even as a large company. Alexandra's concern was legitimate. The success had brought enormous benefits, but also the risk of losing the human essence that had made everything possible. Ethan, when he learned of the conversation, had an idea. Aunt Alexandra, how about we create a program where executives spend 1 day a month working in operational roles, like you spend a day in cleaning, Dr. Howard at reception, me on the phone service. Ethan, that's brilliant. That way we never lose touch with the reality of the employees. Exactly. And they see that the bosses don't think they're superior, that they know how to do any job. The idea was implemented the following month. On the first day, Alexandra spent 8 hours working in cleaning, alongside employees she knew only by name. Dr. Alexandra, said one of the employees during lunch, did you know we don't have a proper place to rest during the break? How so, Brenda? We eat standing up in the hallway. There's no reserved area for the cleaning staff. Alexandra was shocked. How had she overlooked such a basic detail? Brenda, this will be resolved by the end of this week. We'll create a proper space for all employees. Really? We had already lost hope of telling anyone about this. Why didn't you ever speak up before? Oh, Doctor, we thought it wasn't important to the bosses. The conversation opened Alexandra's eyes to problems that existed right in front of her, but that she had never noticed. When Howard spent his day at reception, he discovered that the front desk employees worked 12-hour shifts without adequate relief support. Ethan, working a day on the phone service, realized that employees dealt with difficult customers without proper training to manage conflicts. Everyone, said Alexandra during the program evaluation meeting, this was one of the most important lessons I've had in years. I also learned a lot, said Howard. Things that had been happening for months and we didn't know. The worst part is that the problems weren't big or complicated, said Ethan. They were simple things that could be solved quickly, but no one was paying attention. Exactly. And that makes me think, how many companies lose talent and opportunities simply by not paying attention to the basic details? The reflection led to immediate changes. Proper rest areas were created, work shifts were improved, regular training was implemented, and most importantly, direct communication channels between employees and management were established. You know, said Martha, observing the changes, this reminds me of the beginning when we were a small company and everyone knew each other. It's true, said Alexandra. The difference is that now we have the structure to solve problems systematically, not just individual cases. The executive rotation program became a trademark of the company. Other business owners came from far away to learn about the initiative, which quickly spread to other organizations. 3 years later, when Ethan turned 23, the company had become one of the biggest business and social success stories in the country. But most importantly, it had maintained its human essence and its original values. "Everyone," said Alexandra during a special celebration, "I want to announce that our company has just been chosen as the best company to work for in the US." The news was received with joy by all employees. It was the recognition of years of work focused not only on financial results, but on quality of life and human development. "But you know," Alexandra continued, "that this award is not mine. It's not ours. It belongs to every person who works here, who contributes every day to maintaining our unique culture." "Aunt Alexandra," said Ethan, "can I say something?" "Of course. I want to thank all of you, not just for the professional success, but for what I've learned about being human. You taught me that true success is not individual, it's collective." Ethan's words moved everyone. Even having become a national figure, he maintained his humility and sense of gratitude. "Ethan," said Martha, "I want to thank you for never forgetting where you came from, and for always sharing your victories with those who helped you." "Mom, how could I forget? Everything I am today began with you having the courage to speak up that day." "No, son. Everything you are today began with your talent and your dedication. I just opened a door." "And I gave the first opportunity," said Alexandra. "And I supported it when it seemed too risky," said Howard. "And I showed that everyone deserves a second chance," said Margaret, approaching the group. "So everyone was important," concluded Ethan. "Each one contributed in a different way, but all were essential." The conversation perfectly summarized the philosophy that had guided the company over the years, to recognize and value the contribution of every person, regardless of their position or origin. Years passed. Ethan married a college classmate, also interested in social technology. Martha became a grandmother, and she loved telling her grandchildren the story of how it all began. Alexandra expanded the company to other countries in Latin America, always maintaining the focus on social inclusion and development of local talent. Howard became a respected consultant in humanized management, helping other companies implement similar policies. Margaret, now retired, worked as a volunteer at the foundation, helping young people in financial difficulty find work opportunities. 10 years after the hacker incident, they all gathered for a special celebration, the 10th anniversary of the company's transformation. "Everyone," said Alexandra, looking around the table with affection. "When those computers started showing error messages 10 years ago, I never imagined we would be here today." "None of us did," said Martha. "I just wanted to help, using what my son knew how to do." "And I just wanted to solve the problem as quickly as possible," said Ethan, laughing. "And I was terrified at the possibility of losing everything," said Howard. "And I was dying of shame for having caused the problem," said Margaret. "But look where we are," said Alexandra. "Our company employs 5,000 people in 7 countries. Our foundation has already benefited more than 50,000 young people. And most importantly, we've proven that it's possible to have financial success while being socially responsible." "The most important thing," said Ethan, "is that we've inspired other companies to do the same. Our story has become an example in business schools all over the world." "You know what makes me proudest?" said Martha. "Seeing that our values have remained. Even with all the growth, we're still the same people with the same principles." "It's true," agreed Howard. "The company has grown, but it hasn't lost its soul." "And do you know why?" asked Margaret. "Because from the beginning you understood that people are more important than profits." "Not exactly, Margaret," said Alexandra. "We understood that people and profits can go hand in hand, that there is no need to choose between being human and being efficient." The conversation stretched into the night. Each person shared memories, lessons, and reflections on the journey they had traveled together. "Can I ask a question?" said Ethan, curious. "If you could go back in time, would you change anything?" Everyone thought for a moment. "I would change my delay in accepting your help," said Alexandra. "I could have listened to Martha sooner." "I would change my hesitation in suggesting it to you," said Martha. I could have spoken with more confidence. I would change my initial attitude, said Howard. I could have supported Alexandra more quickly. I would change... Well, I would change everything, said Margaret, emotional. I should never have betrayed your trust. Margaret, said Alexandra, taking her hand, your mistake was part of our story. If it hadn't happened, perhaps we wouldn't have learned about forgiveness, second chances, and most importantly, about taking better care of each other. That's true, agreed Ethan. Everything that happened, good or bad, contributed to us getting to where we are. So we wouldn't change anything, asked Martha. I would change one thing, said Ethan, thoughtful. What? They all asked. I wish my grandfather Richard were here to see all this. I think he would be proud. The mention of Alexandra's father brought tears to everyone's eyes. Richard Harrison had been the company's founder, and his humanized management philosophy had been the foundation for everything they had built. Ethan, said Alexandra, emotional, my father is here. He is in every decision we make, in every value we uphold, in every person we help. Aunt Alexandra is right, said Martha. Good people never truly die. They live on through the good things they inspired. Martha's simple wisdom once again touched everyone deeply. When the night ended, each returned home with a heart full of gratitude. They had built much more than a successful company. They had created a chosen family, united by shared values and the conviction that it is possible to change the world, one opportunity at a time. Ethan, driving home next to his wife, reflected on the extraordinary journey he had lived. Honey, he said to his wife, can you believe it all started with a hacker attack? Actually, dear, it all started with a courageous mother and a humble boss. Ethan smiled. His wife was right. The technology had only been the means. The true catalyst had been the human courage to give and accept opportunities. You know what amazes me the most, he continued. It's how small decisions can have big consequences. If my mother hadn't spoken up that day, but she did, and you responded and Alexandra accepted, and Howard supported, and even Margaret, with her mistake, contributed to something bigger. It's true, every person played their part in their own way. Arriving home, Ethan looked at the computer in his home office. It was very different from that old laptop he had taken to the company on that first day, but the passion for using technology to help people remained exactly the same. Meanwhile, Martha arrived at her apartment, much larger and more comfortable than the one where she had raised Ethan, but decorated with the same simplicity and good taste. Looking at photos on the wall, she saw the progression of a life that had completely changed, yet maintained its essence. Alexandra, at her home, opened her laptop and began writing in her journal, a habit she had developed to record the lessons of each day. Today we celebrate 10 years of our company's transformation. 10 years since I learned that leadership is not about having all the answers, but about knowing how to recognize solutions when they appear. 10 years since I discovered that talent has no social class, age, or diploma. 10 years since I understood that true success is measured by how many people we can help grow alongside us. Howard, at home with his family, was telling his teenage children the story of how a waitress and her 12-year-old son had changed his perspective on the business world. "Dad," said his daughter, "do you think I could visit your company? I want to meet Ethan and Martha." "Of course, sweetheart. And who knows, maybe one day you'll work with us too. We always have room for people who want to make a difference." Margaret, in her small apartment, was talking on the phone with her grandson, now a healthy 15-year-old young man. "Grandma, did you really work at the company that changed the country?" "I did, my dear, and I learned that the most important people are sometimes the ones who make the worst mistakes. What matters is having the courage to make amends." "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to work at a company like that too." "Then study hard, and above all, always be honest. Honesty is worth more than any diploma." The next morning, everyone returned to work with renewed energy. The celebration the night before had reinforced the sense of purpose that drove each of them. Ethan arrived early at his lab, where a team of young talents was already working on new projects. Seeing them dedicated and excited, he remembered himself on that first day. nervous but determined to help. "Team," he said to the group, "who has an idea for our next project?" "Ethan," said Madison, a 17-year-old who had joined the company through the foundation. "I was thinking, what if we created a system to identify children with learning difficulties who are actually gifted?" The question touched Ethan deeply. It was exactly the kind of idea that exemplified the company's purpose, using technology to discover and develop hidden potential. "Madison, that's a fantastic idea. How did you think of that?" "It's just, I was one of those children. In school, the teachers thought I had a learning problem. It was only when I arrived here that they discovered I thought differently, not worse." Madison's story was similar to that of hundreds of young people the company had helped over the years, each with their own uniqueness, but all united by unrecognized potential. "Let's develop this project, Madison, and you will coordinate it." "Me? But I'm only 17. And I was 12 when I started here. Age doesn't define capability." Meanwhile, Martha began her day by visiting the company's different branches. As the General Human Resources Coordinator, she made a point of meeting every new employee personally. "Good morning, Carlos," she said to a young man who had started the previous week. "How has your experience been here?" "Ms. Martha, it's been incredible. I never imagined I could work at a company like this." "How so?" "Where the bosses really care about us, where people are treated like people, not like numbers." Martha smiled. It was the kind of feedback she constantly received, and which made her sure they were on the right path. "Carlos, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." 10 years ago, I was a waitress here. I cleaned these same hallways you now walk as a programmer." Carlos was surprised. "Really? How did you get to where you are?" "With work, dedication, and most importantly, with people who believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." "And now you do the same for others?" "Exactly. It's a chain of good. Every person we help commits to helping others when they have the opportunity." The philosophy of the chain of good had become central to the company's culture. It wasn't just a slogan, it was practiced daily by employees at all levels. Alexandra, in turn, was in a meeting with representatives from other companies interested in implementing similar models. "Dr. Alexandra," said one of the business people present, "what's the secret to your success?" "There's no secret. There are simple principles. Value people, give opportunities to those others ignore, and above all, believe that everyone has something valuable to contribute." "But that must be expensive, right? Hiring and training people with no experience." "It's the best investment you can make. Grateful people work with more dedication. People who receive opportunities become more loyal. And most importantly, different people bring different solutions." "Do you have data on the return on that investment?" Alexandra smiled and showed a detailed presentation. "Our employee turnover is 3% per year, while the industry average is 25%. Our productivity is 40% above average. And our annual growth has been above 30% for 5 consecutive years." The numbers impressed everyone. It was concrete proof that social responsibility and financial success could not only go hand in hand, but actually reinforced each other. "Furthermore," Alexandra continued, "we have zero spending on external recruitment because we always promote from within. Zero spending on labor disputes because our employees know they are valued. And zero spending on external consulting because our own employees always have ideas to improve our processes." One of the business people shook his head in admiration. "You've turned costs into investments." "Exactly, and the return goes far beyond the financial. We take pride in knowing we are changing lives, families, entire communities." At the end of the meeting, several business people committed to implementing similar policies in their companies. It was another step in expanding the model that had begun with a hacker attack 10 years earlier. That afternoon, Ethan received a call that moved him deeply. "Ethan, this is Carlos, remember me?" "Carlos? Sorry, I'm not remembering." "Carlos Andrade from Miami. You gave a talk at my school 3 years ago. I was that kid who asked a bunch of questions about programming." Ethan smiled, remembering the curious and enthusiastic boy. "Of course. Carlos, how are you?" "Man, I'm calling to tell you some amazing news. I got a full scholarship to study computer engineering at the State University." "Carlos, that's fantastic. Congratulations." But that's not all. You know that project you suggested about creating apps for local problems? Yes. I developed an app to help fishermen find the best fishing spots based on oceanographic data. It already has over 1,000 users here in the region. Ethan was incredibly moved. Seeing young people he had inspired creating solutions for their own communities was the greatest reward he could receive. Carlos, that's incredible. You're following exactly the right path. Ethan, I wanted to thank you. Your talk changed my life. It showed me I could use technology to help my community. Carlos, you did all the work. I just planted a seed. And now I want to plant seeds too. I'm going to give talks at other schools, showing other young people that it's possible. After hanging up, Ethan was emotional. It was stories like Carlos's that gave meaning to all his work. "Mum," he called Martha, "you won't believe the call I just received." After telling Carlos his story, Martha was equally moved. "Son, do you realize what's happening? You're creating a network of young people who are going to transform their communities." "Yeah, Mom. It's as if our story is multiplying across the whole country. And it will multiply even more. Every young person you inspire will inspire 10 others, who will inspire 100 more." The conversation made Ethan reflect on the true impact of his work. It wasn't just the projects he developed, it was the inspiration he passed on to other young people to do the same in their own regions. That weekend, the whole family gathered for the traditional monthly lunch at Martha's house. It was a sacred moment, where everyone turned off their phones and dedicated themselves to being together. "Everyone," said Ethan, "I have a proposal for you." "Go on," said Alexandra, curious. "How about we write a book about our story, to inspire other people to create their own success stories?" "Ethan, what a wonderful idea," said Martha. "Our story can really help other people." "But who would write it?" asked Howard. "All of us, each telling our own perspective. That way it's more complete and more human." "I agree," said Margaret. "I think it's important to show that even those who make mistakes can redeem themselves and contribute." "And most importantly," said Alexandra, "to show that true transformations happen when people have the courage to step out of their comfort zones." The idea was unanimously approved. In the following months, each wrote their part of the story, revealing thoughts, feelings, and lessons they hadn't always shared with each other. When the book was ready, they decided to launch it at a special event, with the entire company team and hundreds of young people helped by the foundation. "Everyone," said Alexandra on the launch night, "this book is not about us. It's about what's possible when ordinary people have the courage to make extraordinary choices. It's about believing in human potential," added Martha. "It's about giving opportunities to those others ignore," said Ethan. "It's about turning mistakes into lessons," said Margaret. "And most importantly," concluded Howard, "it's about proving that true success is measured by the number of lives we manage to touch positively." The book became a national bestseller and was soon translated into other languages. Business schools began using their story as a case study, and entrepreneurs from around the world sought to learn more about the Brazilian model of social inclusion through technology. 2 years after the book's launch, Ethan received an invitation that surprised him. An American university wanted to create a chair in his honor, focused on social technology and corporate inclusion. "Aunt Alexandra," he said, showing the invitation, "what do you think?" "Ethan, it's an incredible honor. You deserve all this recognition." "But I don't know if I deserve a chair with my name. I mean, our story was everyone's together." "Ethan," said Martha, "accept it, and use that position to tell our story to the whole world." "Exactly," agreed Howard. "You can train a generation of professionals who think like we do." The idea of using the chair to multiply the Brazilian model around the world excited Ethan. It would be a unique opportunity to expand globally the principles that had guided their growth. "All right, I accept, but on one condition. You all come with me to give some lectures. The story is ours. The university will have to understand that." The proposal was accepted by the university, which was delighted with the possibility of having direct access to all the protagonists of the story. In the first semester of the Ethan Harrison Social Technology and Corporate Inclusion Chair, more than 500 students from 20 countries enrolled. The classes were streamed online to partner universities worldwide. "Welcome," said Ethan in the inaugural class, "to a course about what happens when we stop looking for talent where everyone else is looking and start looking where no one is watching." The first lecture was given by Martha, telling her perspective on that fateful day. "I was an invisible waitress," she began, "working at a company where no one knew my name, my story, or my dreams. But that day, I saw an opportunity to contribute, and I had the courage to speak." The simplicity and honesty of Martha deeply touched the students. Many were moved hearing a woman who had emerged from social invisibility to become a nationally respected executive. The question I leave for you is, how many Marthas exist in the companies where you will work, and will you have the sensitivity to notice them and the humility to listen to them? The following classes were taught by each member of the team, always focusing not just on what happened, but on the lessons that could be applied in different contexts. Alexandra spoke about adaptive leadership and the importance of knowing when to set pride aside to accept unexpected help. Howard addressed risk management and how sometimes the riskiest decisions are the most necessary. Margaret, in one of the most emotional classes, spoke about second chances and how companies can create environments where mistakes become learning opportunities instead of punishments. "Students," said Margaret, "I made the worst mistake an employee can make. I betrayed the company's trust. But this company taught me that people are more complex than their worst moments, and that everyone deserves the chance to redeem themselves." The students' reaction to Margaret's class was extraordinary. Many sent emails sharing how their own perspectives on mistakes and forgiveness had changed. By the end of the first semester, the chair had generated over 50 social technology projects developed by students around the world. Apps to connect lonely seniors, platforms to identify talent in underserved communities, systems to facilitate microcredit for entrepreneurs without access to banks. "Ethan," said the university dean, "your chair is creating a global movement. We have reports of projects inspired by your classes being implemented in over 20 countries." "Professor," replied Ethan, still getting used to the title, "the most important thing isn't the projects themselves. It's the change in mindset we are creating." "How so?" "We are training a generation of professionals who will lead companies thinking first about people and then about profits, who will look for talent in the most unexpected places, who will understand that diversity isn't politically correct, it's economically smart." Ethan's vision proved prophetic. Many alumni of the chair began creating their own companies or implementing inclusion policies in the organizations where they worked. 5 years later, an international study found that companies founded or led by alumni of the chair had employee satisfaction rates 60% above average and economic growth 40% more sustainable. "Mom," said Ethan, showing the study results, "we really did create a quiet revolution." "Son, the revolution wasn't quiet at all. It was loud, just with the right kind of noise, the noise of people celebrating opportunities, growth, and achievements." The poetic wisdom of Martha, even after all these years, continued to impress Ethan. That same year, Ethan was invited to an honor that left him deeply moved, receiving the title of honorary citizen of the city where it all began. "Ethan Harrison," said the mayor during the ceremony, "you put our city on the global map as an example of social innovation and business inclusion." "Mr. Mayor," replied Ethan, "I didn't do this alone. I did it with my mother, with Aunt Alexandra, with Dr. Howard, with Ms. Margaret, and with hundreds of people who believed it was possible to do things differently. And that is why this honor extends to your entire team. You have proven that a city can change the world when its people have the courage to dream big and work together." The ceremony was moving. In attendance were alumni of the chair, business people who had implemented similar models, young people benefited by the foundation, and hundreds of company employees. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. The most emotional moment was when the mayor announced that the school where Ethan had studied would be renamed the Ethan and Martha Harrison Municipal School in honor of the two. "I can't believe it," whispered Martha, moved to tears. "Mom, the school where you taught me to dream will now teach other children to dream too," said Ethan, also emotional. The inauguration ceremony for the new school took place 6 months later. Ethan and Martha insisted it be equipped with the best available technology, but most importantly, with teachers trained to identify and develop unique talents in each child. "Children," said Ethan, speaking to the students at the inauguration, "you are in a school that has a special name, mine and my mother's. But do you know why our name is here?" "Because you are famous," shouted a child. "No," smiled Ethan, "because we proved that any child from anywhere can do amazing things. You only need 2 things: work hard and never give up on your dreams." "And have a mom like Ms. Martha?" asked another child. "Not necessarily," replied Martha, stepping closer. "You just need someone who believes in you. It could be your mother, your father, a teacher, a neighbor. There is always someone willing to help those who want to grow." Martha's words touched not only the children, but all the adults present. It was a reminder that important transformations begin with simple gestures of support and encouragement. 15 years after the hacker attack, the story of Ethan, Martha, Alexandra, and the entire team had become legend. But a living legend, one that continued to bear fruit every day. The company now operated in 15 countries, always with the same model: hire locally, develop regional talent, and maintain a culture of valuing people above all else. The foundation had directly benefited more than 200,000 people, and indirectly, through projects created by the beneficiaries, had reached millions. The chair had trained more than 5,000 professionals in 60 countries, creating a global network of leaders committed to social inclusion. "Everyone," said Alexandra during a special company board meeting, "the time has come for us to think about the future." "How so?" asked Howard. "Ethan is now 33, at the peak of his academic and business career. Martha has unique experience in humanized management. I have become an executive with a global vision. Do you think we have already fulfilled our mission?" "Of course not," said Ethan immediately. "Our mission was not just to create a successful company. It was to prove that it is possible to do business in a humane way and inspire others to do the same." "And we achieved that," said Martha. "But now we need to think about how to ensure this philosophy continues, even when we are no longer here." "Exactly," agreed Howard. "We need to institutionalize our values, ensure they are bigger than any single individual." The discussion led to the creation of the Global Institute of Human Leadership, an international organization dedicated to training business leaders committed to social inclusion and sustainability. "The institute will operate like this," explained Ethan. "Companies from all over the world will send their executives for an intensive 6-month program where they will learn not just management techniques, but most importantly, a humanized philosophy of leadership. And the teachers will be people like us," added Martha, "who have lived through this transformation in practice, not just studied it in books." "Above all," said Alexandra, "we want to train leaders who understand that business success and social responsibility are not opposing concepts but complementary ones." The institute was launched 2 years later, headquartered in Brazil and with branches in 10 countries. The first class had representatives from 100 multinational companies. "Welcome," said Ethan in the inaugural class, "to a program that will challenge everything you've learned about business leadership. Here you won't just learn how to increase profits," said Martha, "but most importantly, how to create sustainable human value. You will understand that the best growth strategy is to invest in the people who work with you," added Alexandra. "And most importantly," concluded Howard, "you will discover that true leaders are not those who command, but those who serve." The Institute's first semester was intense. Executives used to working only with numbers had to learn to work with people. Leaders accustomed to making decisions alone learned the value of collective building. But the most impactful moment was when each executive had to spend a week working in operational roles within their own company, the same program that had been created years earlier. "I never imagined what the cleaning staff goes through," said a German CEO after his week of experience. "They know more about operational efficiency than many managers. I discovered that my customer service staff deal with problems far more complex than I imagined," reported a Japanese director. and they have solutions that not even the most expensive consultants had suggested. The discoveries multiplied. Executives who arrived focused only on financial results, left with a deep understanding of how human and financial results mutually reinforce each other. By the end of the first year, companies whose executives had gone through the institute reported average increases of 35% in employee satisfaction and 25% in productivity. "Ethan," said Alexandra, "I think we've finally found the way to multiply our philosophy globally." "Yeah, Aunt Alexandra, and most importantly, in a sustainable way. Every executive who goes through the institute becomes a multiplier in their company and region." The analysis was correct. In 5 years, the institute had trained over 2,000 executives who implemented significant changes in their organizations, positively affecting over 1 million employees worldwide. "Mom," said Ethan, during one of the special lunches they maintained, "can you believe how far we've come?" "Son, I always believed in your talent, but I confess I never imagined it could be this big." "Mom, it wasn't just my talent. It was our courage, yours to speak and mine to accept the responsibility. And Aunt Alexandra's courage to listen to us, and Dr. Howard's to support, and Ms. Margaret's to redeem herself. Yeah, Mom, it was teamwork from the start. And it still is teamwork. Just look at our company now. Thousands of people working together, each contributing in their own way." Ethan looked around the restaurant where they were having lunch. It was the same simple place where they had started the tradition of lunches, without talking about work. They had kept the location to never forget where they came from. "Mom, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, son. Do you have any regrets? Anything you wish you had done differently?" Martha thought for a few moments. "You know, son, I wish I had found more courage earlier. How many times over these 10 years working as a waitress did I see things I could have suggested but didn't have the courage to speak up? But, Mom, if you had spoken up earlier, maybe it wouldn't have happened at the right time. Maybe Aunt Alexandra wasn't ready to listen." "That could be. But I keep thinking, how many opportunities do we miss in life for lack of courage to speak? Mom, today you are one of the most respected executives in the country, a professor at an international university, a consultant for multinational companies. I think it made up for the lost time." "It did, son. And most importantly, I learned to teach other people to have the courage to speak when they have something to contribute." "That's right, Mom. We turn our regrets into lessons to help others." The conversation reflected the maturity they had both achieved, not only professional but mainly emotional and human. That same year, Ethan received a proposal that made him reflect deeply about the future. "Ethan," said the Minister of Education, "we want you to coordinate a complete reform of technical education in the country, to apply your philosophy of talent identification and development on a national scale." The proposal was tempting and frightening at the same time. It would be a chance to impact millions of young people, but also a gigantic responsibility. "Minister, it's an honor to receive this invitation, but may I have a few days to think and talk with my team?" "Of course, Ethan. It's a very important decision." That night, Ethan talked to everyone about the proposal. "Everyone, what do you think? Is it worth accepting?" "Ethan," said Alexandra, "it's a unique opportunity to transform the education of the entire country. Imagine how many young people could benefit." "I agree," said Martha, "and we already have the necessary experience and knowledge. But it's also an enormous challenge," pondered Howard. "Working with the government is much more complex than working with private companies." "That's true," said Margaret, "but if we don't accept, who will? Who else has the practical experience you all have?" Margaret's question was decisive. Truly, few in the country had the proven practical experience in talent identification and development that they possessed. "I accept," said Ethan the next day, "but with a few conditions." "Which ones?" asked the minister. "First, my team comes with me. I don't work alone. Second, we want total freedom to implement our methodologies without political interference. Third, the project must have continuity regardless of changes in government." The conditions were accepted and began the greatest challenge of Ethan's life: reforming the technical education of a continental country. "Everyone," he said in the first meeting of the new team, "we are going to transform every technical school in the country into a center for talent identification and development." "How?" asked one of the ministry employees. "First, we will train all teachers to identify different types of intelligence and talent. Second, we will modernize curricula to include not only technical skills, but also entrepreneurship and social responsibility. Third, we will create partnerships with companies to ensure all students have real work opportunities." "Ethan," said another employee, "this will shake up the educational structure of decades." "Exactly. It's time to shake it up," replied Martha. "The world has changed, the economy has changed, but technical education has remained the same for 50 years. The project took 3 years to be fully implemented. Over 10,000 teachers were trained, 500 schools were renovated, 1,000 new courses were created, and partnerships with 2,000 companies were established. The results were extraordinary. In 2 years, the employability rate for technical school graduates jumped from 60% to 95%. Even more importantly, 30% of the graduates started their own companies, creating jobs for others. "Minister," said Ethan, presenting the results, "we managed to prove that quality technical education is the key to sustainable social transformation." "Ethan, these numbers are impressive. How did you achieve this?" "By applying the same principles we've always applied, believing in human potential, giving opportunities to those others ignore, and most importantly, understanding that education is not just about transmitting knowledge, but about developing unique talents." The success of the educational reform projected Ethan and his team to an even higher level of national and international recognition. "Son," said Martha, "now I truly think we have fulfilled our mission." "No, Mother, now we have really begun. We've proven it's possible to transform education, business, government. Now other countries will want to replicate our model." Ethan was right. In the following months, delegations from over 20 countries visited Brazil to learn about the new technical education model. "Brazil," said the UN representative, "you have created what could be the educational model of the 21st century." "We didn't create anything new," replied Ethan. "We merely applied ancient principles, respect for the human being, development of unique potential, and most importantly, the belief that everyone has something valuable to contribute." Ethan's humility, even after all the success, remained one of his most striking characteristics. 20 years after the hacker attack that had changed their lives, Ethan, now 43, was invited to an honor that moved him deeply, receiving an honorary doctorate from the university where he had studied. "Ethan Harrison," said the Chancellor, "you have transformed the lives of millions of people around the world, proving that talent has no borders and that true education is that which develops the best in every person." "Chancellor," replied Ethan, "this title is not mine. It belongs to my mother, who had the courage to speak, to Aunt Alexandra, who had the humility to listen, to Dr. Howard, who had the wisdom to support, to Ms. Margaret, who had the strength to redeem herself. And most importantly, it belongs to all the young people who proved that, when given opportunities, they can transform the world." The ceremony was broadcast live to the entire world. In the audience were hundreds of alumni from programs created by Ethan, business leaders who had implemented similar models, and young people from various parts of the world who had been inspired by his story. "Dr. Ethan," asked a journalist after the ceremony, "what is your message for young people who are just starting out now?" "Simple. Talent exists everywhere, but opportunities do not. If you have talent, work to develop it. If you have the power to give opportunities, use that power to transform lives, and most importantly, never underestimate anyone. The best solutions sometimes come from the most unexpected places." And for business leaders? Stop looking for talent only in the obvious places. Look at those who are invisible in your company. Listen to those who are not normally heard. You will be surprised by what you discover. One final question. After everything you have achieved, do you have new dreams? Ethan smiled and looked at Martha, who was in the audience. Our dream now is to see our story repeating itself around the world. That other mothers have the courage to speak, that other business leaders have the humility to listen, that other people have the strength to redeem themselves, and most importantly, that other young people prove there are no limits for those with talent who receive opportunities. Ethan's answer perfectly summarized the 2-decade journey. From an emergency solution to a computer problem, they had created a global movement of social transformation through the appreciation of human potential. That night after the ceremony, the entire original family, as they called themselves, gathered for a special dinner. "Everyone," said Alexandra, "can you believe everything we've lived through together?" "Sometimes it feels like it was a dream," said Martha, "but it was real, and it was beautiful." "And it continues to be real," said Ethan. "Every young person our foundation helps, every company that changes its policies, every country that reforms its education, all of that is a continuation of our story." "It's true," agreed Howard. "Our story didn't end. It became a seed for thousands of other stories." "And you know what makes me proudest," said Margaret. "It's that we managed to grow without losing our essence. We're still the same people, with the same values." "Margaret is right," said Alexandra. "Success didn't change us. It just gave us more tools to do what we always believed was right. And the most important thing," concluded Ethan, "is that we proved to the world that true success isn't individual. It's collective. It's seeing how many people we've been able to help grow along with us." The conversation lasted into the early hours. Each one shared memories, reflections, and above all, gratitude for having lived such a transformative experience together. When they said goodbye already at dawn, everyone was certain they had been part of something much bigger than their individual lives. They had been instruments of a transformation that would continue impacting future generations. Ethan, driving home, thought about how a simple suggestion from a concerned mother had turned into a global movement for social change. It was living proof that small gestures, when made with courage and accepted with humility, can literally change the world. Upon arriving home, he found his wife and children still sleeping. Looking at them, he thought about the world he was leaving for the next generations. A world where talent would be recognized regardless of origin. Where companies would understand that people are the greatest asset. Where education would develop unique potential instead of standardizing minds. It was a better world. And he had helped build it, one opportunity at a time, one transformed life at a time. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this inspiring story. Do you believe small acts of courage can truly transform lives? Have you experienced or witnessed situations where someone was underestimated but later surprised everyone? Share your opinion and your own experiences in the comments. If this story touched your heart, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one.